Have you ever spoken with all the reason in the world, yet watched your words fall flat, as if the air itself refused to carry them? It's a sting we all know when your ideas are dismissed, when someone looks past you as though your voice held no weight. In those moments, many believe respect can only be seized by shouting louder, by pressing harder. But the Stoics would tell us otherwise. True power has never been about volume. It has always been about precision. Picture yourself at a table, maybe in a meeting, maybe in your own home, tension rising, voices clashing. And then, with just a few calm words, the room shifts. People lean in. They listen. Not because you demanded respect, but because your presence left no other choice. Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you respond." The right words are like arrows, small, silent, yet piercing. What if you could carry such arrows with you? Stay with me, and you'll see how a handful of phrases can quietly change the way others treat you. As we step into the first chapter, imagine the silence of a meeting room where every word weighs more than the air itself. The table is filled with notes, restless glances, and the quiet pressure of unspoken judgments. You sit there, listening, observing, feeling the pulse of ideas flowing across the room. Someone proposes a path forward, one that clearly veers into error, a plan so fragile it cannot hold. In that instant, your heart might urge you to shout, to cut them down, to show why their thinking collapses under its own weight. But here is where a deeper strength reveals itself. Instead of clashing, you choose clarity. Instead of noise, you choose composure. And so, with steady eyes and a voice calm as still water, you say, "I understand your point, but I disagree." The atmosphere changes. No storm, no raised voices, just a firm line drawn in the sand. Now imagine the ripple that sentence creates. It tells the other person you heard them. It tells them you value their effort. And yet, it tells them you will not be swept away by the tide of opinion. That is where the quiet power lies. You are not attacking, you are not defensive, you are in control. Epictetus once taught, "It is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters." In moments like this, you embody that wisdom. You do not let anger, pride, or insecurity speak for you. You let reason guide you. By separating emotion from judgment, you remain the captain of your soul while others drift with the wind. Picture another scene. The boardroom is warm, voices sharp. Someone pushes an idea and eyes turn to you, waiting to see whether you bend or whether you stand. A younger version of you might have reacted quickly, eager to prove intelligence, eager to dominate. But the seasoned mind knows that respect is not born from volume, it is born from restraint. So you pause, let silence breathe, and then speak your disagreement with grace. It's like a sword, still sheathed, sharp but unseen. The edge is felt even without a swing, and in that restraint you earn something no shout could ever give, quiet authority. Think of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, seated in chambers where voices battled for influence. He did not always win by force. He often won by calm presence, by the unshakable weight of reason. His meditations remind us, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. When you say, "I understand your point, but I disagree," you are living this principle. You honor truth without dishonoring the one who spoke. You defend your judgment without wounding theirs. That balance is rare, and rare things command respect. Consider also the lesson hidden here. You do not need to prove you are smarter. Too many waste energy on proving superiority, fighting for recognition in every argument. But the Stoic knows that independence of judgment is enough. Your worth is not determined by agreement or applause. It is shown in the courage to stand apart, to disagree without venom, to hold your ground without arrogance. That is what separates the wise from the reactive. Let me share a micro story. A friend once told me about a tense negotiation. Two sides locked in, voices rising, tempers fraying. At the height of the clash, he leaned forward, smiled slightly and said, "I understand your point, but I disagree." The room shifted. The words diffused the fire, but also held the line. No one laughed at him. No one dismissed him. Instead, they saw a man who could stand his ground without needing to crush anyone else. That, he told me, was the moment respect became his ally. This phrase is magic because it avoids direct confrontation while planting a seed in the mind of the listener. They may not change instantly, but they will remember. They will carry with them the impression that you think for yourself, that you are not a leaf tossed by their breath. And in time, that impression hardens into respect. People respect those who cannot be easily moved, those whose opinions stand like stones in the river, not washed away, but shaping the current around them. The Stoics remind us that true power lies not in the chaos of reaction, but in the discipline of response. Every time you use this phrase, you practice that discipline. You train yourself to resist the urge of the ego, the impulse to win at all costs. You remind yourself that clarity is stronger than noise. And with each practice, you forge a character that others cannot help but recognize. So here we are, standing at the threshold of the journey. One phrase, so small, yet capable of piercing the armor of arrogance and doubt. One phrase that says, "I have heard you, I respect you, but I will not abandon my reason." This is not just a sentence, it is a shield, it is a declaration, it is a quiet command. And as you carry it with you into the next chapters, remember this: the path of respect begins not with force, but with the courage to hold your own line, firm yet calm. And from here, the story moves forward, for there are other phrases, other arrows of language, each one carrying its own weight, each one teaching us how to command respect without ever raising our voice. Moving into the second chapter, picture the sting of a careless remark slipping into the air like a knife hidden in laughter. The room is filled with voices, some light, some heavy, and then someone crosses the line, a joke that lands with a thud, a comment that cuts instead of connects. The world seems to expect you to smile, to let it pass, to play along. But your silence would be permission. Your laughter would be surrender. And so, instead of swallowing the discomfort, you raise your eyes, hold their gaze, and with steady calmness you say, "I don't find that appropriate." The mood shifts. The invisible line has been drawn, and everyone feels it. Now imagine the effect of those words. No shouting, no lecture, just a boundary, firm and clear. It tells the world, there are lines I do not allow to be crossed. It tells the one who spoke, I heard you, but I will not join you. And it tells yourself, my dignity matters. Seneca once said, he who respects himself will be respected by others. When you voice this phrase with serenity, you prove that respect begins within. You are not begging for it. You are not fighting for it. You are simply showing that you already live by it. Here's where the Stoic shield rises. The philosophers of old taught that personal dignity is not a robe you wear in public, but an invisible shield you carry within. It does not need to be flaunted. It only needs to be held. And in moments of disrespect, that shield either holds firm or it cracks. When you calmly say, "I don't find that appropriate," you reinforce the shield. You do not argue. You do not attack. You remain unshaken. That steadiness, that refusal to validate what is wrong, is what makes others pause. It forces them to look at themselves, often more sharply than any rebuke could. Think of a gathering I once witnessed. A friend of mine was seated at a dinner table, surrounded by laughter and conversation. In the middle of the warmth, someone decided to make a cruel joke about a person not present, disguising malice as humor. Many chuckled out of habit, but my friend did not. He set his fork down, looked directly at the speaker, and simply said, "I don't find that appropriate." Silence followed. The joker shifted uncomfortably and the evening changed. Respect was reclaimed not by volume, but by quiet courage. From here, the deeper lesson unfolds. Dignity is not reactive, it is proactive. When you refuse to validate disrespect, you are not punishing the other. It is not about revenge. You are protecting the soil where your character grows. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In refusing to laugh at cruelty or tolerate mockery, you are being that person. You become the living example, not by preaching, but by standing. Ask yourself, how many times have you gone along with something you knew was wrong, just to keep peace? How many times did silence make you complicit in harm? Every time we excuse disrespect, we lower the value of our own presence. Every time we let a bad joke pass, we surrender a piece of our shield. The Stoics would not call this kindness, they would call it weakness, and weakness, left unchecked, becomes habit. But there is hope, and it is simple. One phrase, spoken with calm. It is not a fight. It is not a debate. It is a refusal to trade your dignity for someone else's comfort. That is where real respect is born. People will test you. They will push to see if you bend. But the moment you hold your line, they know where you stand. And from that clarity, respect follows. Here's the paradox. The calmer you are, the stronger your words become. In a world loud with overreactions, composure is thunder. In a culture that often mistakes cruelty for humor, dignity is rebellion. When you say, "I don't find that appropriate," you are not just correcting a moment, you are teaching everyone present how to treat you, and perhaps how to treat each other. And so we come to the close of this chapter. A single phrase, small yet unshakable, becomes a fortress around your self-respect. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify your values. You just need to draw the line once and draw it clearly. That is how dignity survives in the noise. That is how respect is earned in silence. At this stage, carry the shield forward. For there are more phrases, more tools of quiet strength waiting ahead, each one a way to command respect without ever raising your voice. Advancing to the third chapter, picture the rising heat of a conversation where voices sharpen like blades. Someone across from you leans forward, their words quick, their tone heavy, their volume climbing as if to corner you. The instinct to push back, to match their energy, to raise your own voice and meet fire with fire, it flares in your chest. But instead, you pause, you take a breath, and you steady yourself. Then, with calm that feels almost like silence breaking through thunder, you say, "Let's talk," when we can do so respectfully. In that instant, the storm falters. Now imagine the power of that pause. The one who came at you with aggression suddenly loses ground. They expected a clash. They wanted you to enter their chaos. But you did not. By refusing to fight on their terms, you shifted the terrain beneath their feet. They must now either adjust or walk away because you have drawn the line. And you have done so without anger, without a raised hand or raised tone, only with words weighted by composure. This is not retreat. This is mastery. Here's where the Stoic principle becomes flesh. Epictetus said, "You cannot control the actions of others, but you can control your response." This phrase embodies that teaching. You cannot stop people from being rude. You cannot stop them from being loud, but you can choose not to bow to it. You can refuse to give them the battle they seek. In doing so, you protect something far more precious than pride. You protect your peace. And peace, once guarded, becomes a shield no one can easily pierce. Consider a story. A colleague once told me about a workplace conflict. He was presenting an idea when another cut him off repeatedly, voice sharp, tone dismissive. The room watched, waiting for escalation. Instead of snapping, he paused. He looked the interrupter in the eye and said, "Let's talk when we can do so respectfully." Silence followed. The aggressor leaned back, visibly unsettled. For the rest of the meeting, no one dared speak over him. Respect was restored, not through force, but through the simple refusal to entertain disrespect. From here, we see a deeper truth. This phrase is not only about ending toxic exchanges, it is about setting the rules of engagement. By saying it, you declare, "This is how dialogue with me will happen, or it will not happen at all." That is authority. That is control. Not over others, but over yourself, over the space you allow. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When someone raises their voice, your best answer is not to mirror them, but to show another way. By staying calm, you rob them of their victory." Ask yourself, how many times have you been pulled into arguments that left you drained, not because you lost, but because you surrendered your composure? How many times did you replay those moments, wishing you had chosen differently? With this phrase, you now have a tool to change that story. It reminds you that respect is not given to those who shout the loudest, but to those who decide the terms of the conversation. And those terms are always stronger when they are grounded in dignity. The beauty of this approach is that it transforms the dynamic immediately. The first time you use it, you may feel the tension of the silence that follows. You may notice eyes turning to you, curious, perhaps even admiring. Because you did not take the bait. You showed that strength is not always the louder voice, but often the quieter one that refuses to break. And in that silence, your words carry more weight than 100 shouted replies. This is where Stoic self-mastery reveals its power. You're not running away, you're not surrendering the ground, you're inviting the other to rise to your level, or not at all. Either way, you remain unshaken. And the lesson is absorbed not only by the person you address, but by everyone who witnesses it. People remember composure. They remember the one who refused to be rattled. So let this phrase settle into your arsenal. It is not just a way to stop disrespect. It is a way to teach others how you are to be treated. It is a way to claim the higher ground without lifting your voice. It is a way to remind yourself that power lies not in the storm, but in the calm that stands unmoved within it. And as you carry this forward, let it prepare you for the next step, another phrase. Another quiet arrow of language that can disarm hostility and leave behind only respect. For the journey of commanding respect without shouting is not yet complete. It is only gaining strength. Entering the 4th chapter, imagine a door in your mind that you alone hold the key to. On the other side, noise builds, arguments tangled like vines, words twisted not to find truth, but to provoke, to win, to exhaust. You stand at the threshold and you feel the pull to keep wrestling, to keep answering, to prove one more point. Yet something deeper within whispers, not all doors deserve to stay open. So you look calmly at the person before you, and with a voice steady as stone, you say, "I'd prefer not to continue this conversation." In that moment, the handle turns, the door closes, and with it, the tension falls away. Now see how the atmosphere shifts. They expected a fight. They wanted the last word to sting, to keep you spinning in circles of pride and anger. Instead, you step out of the game entirely. You are not running, you are choosing. That phrase is not escape, it is discipline. It declares, "My energy will not be wasted on paths that lead nowhere." And in that clarity, you win something greater than the argument. You win yourself. Here's where the Stoic wisdom breathes through the centuries. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is the essence of the phrase. To continue trading insults is to mirror the one who hurt you. To disengage with dignity is to rise above. You do not mirror their chaos, you reflect your own composure. And in that difference, strength is revealed. Think of a scene I once witnessed. Two colleagues locked in a debate, each word sharper than the last. One sought not resolution, but victory, poking, pushing, smirking at every response. The other paused. He smiled gently, shook his head, and said, "I'd prefer not to continue this conversation." He gathered his notes and left. The room went quiet. The aggressor was left with nothing but his own echo. Days later, when the dust had settled, everyone remembered not the loud man, but the one who chose peace. Respect had shifted in silence. From here, understand that closing a conversation is not weakness, it is wisdom. The Stoics compared the mind to a fortress. A fortress does not open every gate to every passerby. It decides who enters and when. Your time, your attention, your peace are the treasures inside. To guard them is not selfish, it is survival. And when you walk away from a barren quarrel, you are guarding what truly matters. Ask yourself, how many times have you let yourself be drained by arguments that resolved nothing? How often have you stayed, not out of purpose, but out of pride? Each time you gave away your most valuable resource, your calm. Each time you proved nothing except that your peace was negotiable. The phrase, "I'd prefer not to continue this conversation," changes that. It reminds you that peace is not weakness. Peace is priority. Notice too how others perceive this act. The person who shouts, who insists, who refuses to let go, they look smaller, not stronger. The one who chooses to step away looks larger, because it takes courage to walk away when pride begs you to stay. It takes discipline to stop when ego urges you to continue. And discipline in the end commands more respect than any victory in an endless fight. At this stage, the lesson becomes clear. Not every battle deserves your sword. Not every word deserves your answer. Silence, chosen with intent, becomes louder than any retort. Withdrawal, when guided by principle, is not surrender, it is strategy. The Stoic path does not ask you to prove yourself to every voice. It asks you to master yourself before all voices. So carry this phrase with you as a key, a shield, a quiet weapon. I'd prefer not to continue this conversation is more than words. It is a boundary, a declaration of value, a reminder that your peace is worth more than the last word. And when you close that door, you open another, the path toward freedom, dignity, and respect that no quarrel can steal. Here's where we leave this chapter, with the knowledge that not engaging is sometimes the greatest engagement of all. And from here, we move onward toward the final phrase, one that seals the journey of commanding respect without ever raising your voice. Entering the 5th chapter, imagine the weight of another's conviction pressing against you. A friend, a colleague, perhaps even a family member stands before you, insistent, their words circling like waves against a rock. They want you to agree, to yield, to adopt their view as your own. You feel the pressure rising, the push to defend, to argue, to fight for your side. But instead of being swept into the storm, you choose a different path. You steady your breath, lift your head, and say with calm resolve, "That's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it." In that single phrase, the waves break. The rock remains. Now see what happens in that silence. The other expected resistance, maybe even anger, but you gave them neither. What you gave was clarity, respect for their right to speak, yes, but also respect for your own right to stand firm. That is the balance most people miss. Too often we either surrender our stance to keep the peace, or we fight with fire and turn the moment into ashes. This phrase does neither. It draws the line with grace. It closes the door to pressure, but it leaves the window of respect open. Here's where Stoic wisdom breathes into life. Seneca warned, "To be a slave to the opinions of others is the worst of prisons." Think about that. The world is full of invisible chains, many forged not from iron, but from expectation. Chains that bind you to approval, to the desperate need to be liked, to the fear of standing alone. But when you say, "That's your opinion and I respect it, but I don't share it," you are slipping the key into the lock. You are walking out of that prison. You are reminding both yourself and the other that true respect does not mean surrender. Consider this story. A colleague of mine once faced relentless pressure in a meeting. The team was pushing for a decision he could not agree with. Point after point came at him, the circle tightening, voices layering over each other. The old version of him might have argued every detail, draining himself in the struggle. Instead, he waited. He let the noise settle, and then, with steady eyes, he said, "That's your opinion and I respect it, but I don't share it." The room quieted. The tension eased. No fireworks, no fight, just a quiet declaration of independence. In that moment, he wasn't only heard, he was respected. From here, we see a deeper lesson. Respecting someone does not mean you must bend to them. True connection is not built on sameness, but on the ability to stand side by side with difference. This phrase allows you to hold your ground without closing the door entirely. It is a reminder that disagreement need not be war. In fact, when spoken with calm, it can be a bridge, one that honors the dignity of the other while preserving your own freedom. Ask yourself, how often have you compromised your truth just to avoid tension? How often have you agreed outwardly while disagreeing silently and carried that weight afterward? Every time you do, you trade authenticity for comfort. But comfort bought at the price of your judgment is hollow. The Stoics remind us that the highest freedom is inner freedom. And inner freedom is won each time you stand in your truth without apology. This is where your strength becomes visible. You are not defiant. You are not hostile. You are simply unshaken. That steadiness unsettles those who rely on pressure. It teaches them that their insistence has no hold over you. More importantly, it teaches you that you can walk through life without carrying the burden of pleasing every voice. Picture a family dinner, the kind where opinions clash across the table. One relative insists, pushing harder with every word. The old you might have snapped back or sat in silence to keep peace. But the new you smiles gently and says, "That's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it." The conversation loses its teeth. You keep your dignity, they keep theirs, and the evening moves on without the scars of an unnecessary fight. That is the quiet victory of restraint. At this stage, understand the power you now hold. You cannot control the beliefs of others. You cannot bend the world to match your view, but you can master the art of standing tall in your own lane. You can master the courage of disagreeing without hostility. That is not just wisdom. That is freedom. So carry this phrase with you like a compass. When others try to draw you into battles of opinion, let it remind you that agreement is not the price of respect. Let it remind you that your independence of thought is the crown no one can take. And let it remind the world that true strength is calm, courteous, but immovable. If this truth resonates with you, drop a simple comment. Just write respect. And if you're walking this path of calm strength, subscribe to join the journey so together we keep learning how to stand firm without shouting. Because at the end of the day, respect is not demanded, it is inspired. And the one who can say, "That's your opinion and I respect it, but I don't share it," walks free and walks strong. The phrases you've just discovered are like keys, small in form but able to open heavy doors. Yet keys alone don't build the house. What holds the structure together is the way you live once those doors are opened. The daily choices, the steady habits, the character that gives every word its weight. And so the focus shifts. It's no longer only about what to say in a heated moment, but about how to carry yourself so that every moment speaks on your behalf. As we step into the next chapter, picture a figure who does not need to speak in order to be heard. They enter a room, and nothing about their posture is hurried. Nothing about their presence is careless. The silence around them is not empty, it is full. This is the lesson of presence. The kind of respect that lingers not because of words said in a single moment, but because of the consistency of a life lived with discipline. Now imagine a craftsman working late into the night. His workshop is dim, only the steady glow of a lamp at his table. Hour after hour, he repeats the same movements, chiseling, shaping, refining. Few notice him, no applause, no recognition. Yet when his work finally leaves that table and enters the world, people are struck by its quality. They wonder how he commands such mastery. What they don't see is that his respect was earned long before anyone praised him. It was forged in the quiet repetition of showing up fully, day after day. Here's where Stoic philosophy guides us deeper. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Presence is not declared, it is not demanded, it is proven in the consistency of action, in the alignment between word and deed. A person may use the sharpest phrases in a single conversation, but if their life does not echo those words, the respect fades. It is the steady pattern, the reliability, the integrity that gives the phrases power. Without that foundation, words are feathers in the wind. I recall a leader I once observed during a crisis. There was panic in the air, voices colliding, everyone grasping for control. He did not shout, he did not scramble. He simply stood with calm posture, listening, his eyes steady. When he finally spoke, the room fell quiet, not because his words were more elaborate than others, but because his presence had already spoken before his lips moved. People trusted him not only in that moment, but because they had seen him live the same way in smaller, unseen moments. He was consistent in calm, consistent in clarity. Respect had been earned long before the crisis arrived. Think of your own life. How often do we wait for the big moment to show strength? The truth is, presence is built in the ordinary. It is in how you greet the person no one else notices. It is in how you keep a promise long after the excitement of making it has faded. It's in how you hold yourself when no one is watching. Seneca once said, "Character is what you are in the dark. Presence is not created in the spotlight, it is revealed by it." The temptation, of course, is to think that respect can be seized quickly through clever words, through one impressive gesture. But the Stoic knows that the most enduring respect is like a tree's shadow. It grows slowly, shaped by the steady roots beneath. If you want to command respect without shouting, begin with the discipline of living in alignment. Let your presence do the heavy lifting. Let your consistency become the proof others cannot deny. Here's the paradox. People may not notice consistency right away. At times it feels invisible, even thankless. But over months, over years, it becomes undeniable. The one who shows up every day with integrity and self-control will always outlast the one who burns bright in a single burst and then fades. And when your presence becomes associated with reliability, with steadiness, with clarity, people listen when you finally choose to speak. Imagine walking into a room where someone known for rashness and unreliability begins to speak. The words may sound strong, but doubt lingers in the listeners. Now imagine another person, quiet but consistent, whose actions always match their words. When they speak, even softly, everyone leans forward. That is the weight of presence. That is respect earned not in a moment, but in a lifetime of moments. At this stage, remember that presence is not about being noticed, it is about being undeniable. You do not need to announce who you are when your character has already spoken. You do not need to shout when your life has already commanded the room. Presence is not the loudest drum, it is the steady heartbeat that guides the rhythm. So let your presence grow through discipline, through consistency, through the quiet courage of aligning action with principle. Let people learn that your words are never empty because your life proves them true. And when that presence becomes your constant companion, you will discover that respect flows naturally, without force, without demand, and without a single raised voice. And from here, the journey deepens, for silence itself carries a strategy, and knowing when not to speak often reveals more power than words ever could. Moving into the second chapter, imagine the air thick with tension, voices rising, each word sharpened like a blade. In that moment, the natural impulse is to fight back, to cut louder, to meet force with force. Yet there is another way, the way of silence. Not silence of fear, not silence of surrender, but silence as discipline, silence as power. Now picture a crowded street. Two men quarrel, their shouting drawing eyes from every corner. The crowd gathers, entertained by the noise. And then a third man, accused unjustly, simply looks at his accuser and says nothing. He walks on, unshaken, leaving the noise behind. The crowd's attention shifts. The quarrel feels small, childish. The silent man, though he spoke no word, leaves the deepest impression. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Chosen silence is never empty, it is intention made visible. Here's where the Stoic edge cuts through. Anyone can speak when provoked. Few can withhold. To remain silent when insulted is to reveal mastery over the one thing that cannot be taken from you, your response. Words are fuel. Remove your fuel and the fire burns itself out. The aggressor collapses under his own noise, and your calm becomes the unshakable ground beneath you. I remember a manager confronted in front of his team. A colleague attacked him harshly, words sharpened with intent to humiliate. Everyone waited for a sharp reply, but he stayed still. He let the silence stretch until it grew heavy. Then, with measured calm, he said, "We'll revisit this when we can do so respectfully." Nothing more. The aggressor faltered. The room shifted. In that instant, silence spoke louder than defense ever could. Think about how silence unsettles those who expect a reaction. In a culture addicted to noise, silence is unnatural. People expect you to argue, to defend, to bite back. When you don't, they stumble. They begin to doubt themselves. They feel the weight of their own chaos. That is why silence often wounds deeper than the sharpest retort. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. What power lies in that choice? To remain silent when baited is not weakness. It is freedom. It is the decision to conserve your energy for battles that matter, to refuse the small wars that steal your calm. Silence is not retreat. It is a refusal to let another person set the terms of your spirit. But silence does more than protect you. It teaches others. It shows them that anger cannot command you, that insults cannot bend you, that noise cannot move you. Over time, this lesson changes the way they approach you. They argue less. They push less. They come to you differently because they sense your calm will not break. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Each act of silence in the face of provocation is an act of bravery, and with it comes freedom. Silence, however, is not easy. It feels unnatural, even heavy. In the moment, it feels like you are losing, yet in truth, you are winning the only battle that matters, the battle within. The Stoics practiced voluntary hardship, fasting, cold, discomfort. Silence is the same kind of discipline. To withhold when you want to release, to pause when your ego screams to reply. It is a training ground for the soul. Picture being mocked in public. The words sting, the laughter of others burns, your chest tightens, your pride demands a counterstrike. But you breathe, you wait, you let the silence expand until the noise sounds smaller. And then, if you choose to speak, your words land with the weight of stone. That is the paradox. Silence gives your words gravity. It ensures that when you finally decide to speak, people lean in to listen. At this stage, see silence not as absence, but as armor. Not silence that avoids, but silence that commands. A sword sheathed but sharp. A shield that protects without clashing. When you master it, you find you no longer need to fight every battle. The world's noise rages on, but you remain unmoved. Silence becomes the ground you stand on, steady beneath every storm. And from here, the journey deepens further, because once silence has taught you control, you discover the unexpected reward. People no longer push as hard. Instead, they begin to seek the steadiness they once tried to shatter. Advancing to the third chapter, imagine the strange shift that happens when you no longer meet conflict with conflict, but instead carry yourself with such steadiness that even your silence commands attention. At first, people test you. They prod, they push, they interrupt, waiting for you to rise and meet them at their level. But when you refuse, when you remain calm and speak only with clarity, something curious unfolds. They stop pushing as hard. They begin to lean toward you. What once was an attempt to shake you becomes a search for the steadiness you refuse to lose. Now, picture a circle of colleagues caught in debate. Ideas fly, voices overlap, egos wrestle. The atmosphere grows heavier. each person more desperate to be heard. In the middle of it all, one person does not rush. They listen fully, they wait, and when they finally speak, their words are measured, simple and firm. The group slows, the shouting drops. People listen not because the words are louder, but because the presence behind them is undeniable. That is how quiet strength turns into guidance. Without trying, you become the one they look to. Here's where Stoic wisdom deepens. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." When you first choose calm over noise, people may mistake it for weakness. They may think you have no fire. But over time, the pattern becomes clear. You are not indifferent. You're deliberate. You are not weak. You are in control. And eventually, those who once tried to break your silence begin to respect it. They come to you not to provoke, but to learn. This is how influence is born, not demanded, not seized, but drawn to you like iron to a magnet. I recall a mentor I once knew. He was not the loudest man in the room. He did not compete for attention. Yet, in moments of tension, everyone looked to him. Why? Because he had proven time after time that he did not panic when others lost their heads. He did not let anger dictate his words. He did not need to dominate. His strength lay in consistency. And because of that, people trusted him more than those who tried to win with noise. His influence was not claimed, it was granted. Seneca reminded us that he who has great power should use it lightly. True influence is not about showing force at every turn. It is about carrying yourself with such restraint that people know they can trust you, not just in moments of calm, but in moments of chaos. The one who can stand still while others scatter becomes the natural center. It is human nature. We all lean toward stability. Think of your own experiences. How many times have you found yourself respecting someone, not because of what they said in one heated moment, but because of how they consistently carried themselves across many? Respect that lasts is never built in a single outburst. It is built over time in the quiet habit of showing self-control. And in the long run, that respect evolves into influence. People begin to seek your guidance, not because you demanded it, but because you became the calm they could not find in themselves. Here's the paradox. The less you try to be admired, the more others admire you. The less you compete to be heard, the more they listen when you finally speak. Influence is not about constant effort. It is about alignment, when your words and actions carry the same weight. When you show restraint in anger, composure in insult, patience in conflict, others begin to lean into that rhythm. They find in you what they cannot hold in themselves. Marcus Aurelius captured it perfectly. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. The one who practices discipline inwardly and patience outwardly becomes a rare presence, and rare things draw respect without needing to announce their value. When you live this way, you don't need to ask people to follow. They follow naturally because your steadiness becomes a compass in their confusion. At this stage, the lesson grows sharper. It is not enough to win moments. Influence must be earned through consistency. If your calm lasts only until the next insult, people will see through it. But if your calm endures insult after insult, day after day, they cannot ignore it. Over time, they begin to rely on it. They begin to depend on it. And in their dependence, respect becomes unavoidable. So let this truth settle deeply. Quiet strength does more than protect you. It changes the people around you. It disarms hostility. It reshapes conversations. It teaches others how to act simply by showing them how you refuse to be moved. And as this pattern repeats, something profound happens. You no longer fight for influence. Influence comes to you, and from here the journey does not end. For once others have begun to look to your calm for guidance, you step into an even greater challenge: how to carry this authority not as a burden, but as a presence so natural it hardly needs to be named, a power invisible yet undeniable. From here, let us turn to a quieter kind of power, one that does not declare itself with banners or loud voices, but settles into the fabric of every room like gravity. It is the sort of influence that bends the mood, slows the tempo, changes the current, and yet no one can point to a single dramatic gesture. It does not rely on shouting, on proving, or on demanding. It rests in the person who has built themselves so steadily, so consistently, that their very presence becomes an anchor. This is the essence of invisible authority, the kind of respect you do not ask for because it is already given. Imagine walking into a room where conversations overlap, where energy is scattered, where egos spar like children wrestling for space. In the corner sits a figure who does not compete for attention. They do not interrupt. They do not rush to insert themselves. And yet, when they shift slightly, when they finally lift their eyes, the room seems to slow. People recalibrate, as if drawn unconsciously into their orbit. This is not magic. It is not luck. It is the natural weight of a character that has been disciplined, of a soul dyed over years with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." What you think repeatedly, what you choose consistently, eventually becomes who you are. If those choices are rooted in discipline, patience, and integrity, then others will sense it before you ever open your mouth. Invisible authority is not about appearance, it is about substance. The world may not be able to explain why they listen to you more than to others, but they will feel the steadiness you carry, and they will adjust themselves to it. Picture the seasoned sailor guiding his ship through dense fog. He does not stand on the deck screaming to prove he knows what he is doing. His hands are steady on the wheel. His gaze is fixed on the horizon. The crew trusts him not because he made the loudest promises, but because his calm in uncertainty reveals experience, reveals mastery. They feel safe because he feels sure. That is how authority works when it is quiet. It reassures without theatrics. I once watched a negotiation unfold between two business groups. One side grew agitated, their words sharp, their volume rising. They were desperate to seize control through pressure. On the other side sat a man who rarely spoke. He listened, asked a few pointed questions, and never raised his voice. His stillness unsettled the others because they could not shake him. Eventually their noise burned out, and it was his calm hand that guided the final agreement. Later, people said, he was in charge the whole time, yet he hardly spoke. That is the paradox. Invisible authority feels like leadership long before it is named. Seneca said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." And that is precisely what invisible authority requires, not conquering others, but refusing to be conquered by your own impulses. The person who does not scramble to defend every point, who does not lash back at every insult, who does not need to prove themselves at every turn, this is the person others come to trust. It is not the absence of power, it is power refined. Think of the leader who constantly reminds others of their title, their status, their authority. People obey, but reluctantly. Their respect is fragile, dependent on the shield of hierarchy. Now think of the leader who enters quietly, says little, but whose life has proven consistency. People follow without being told, not out of fear, but out of trust. One authority fades when the title is gone. The other endures because it is tied not to position, but to personhood. Invisible authority also releases you from the exhausting performance of always trying to impress. You no longer chase validation in every interaction. You no longer burn yourself out proving worthiness. Instead, you align your life with principle, letting actions confirm what words no longer need to. Over time, this consistency hardens into credibility. People may not remember every word you spoke, but they will remember how you carried yourself. That memory becomes its own argument. Ask yourself, are you still trying to be noticed, or are you slowly becoming undeniable? The difference lies in whether you spend your energy on appearances or on substance. Those who chase recognition often gain it briefly, only to lose it when the wind shifts. Those who build steadiness day after day gain something deeper. They gain trust. They gain quiet influence. They gain the respect that does not need to be renewed each time because it is woven into who they are. Epictetus gave us this advice. First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Authority begins here. Decide what kind of person you wish to become and live in alignment with that decision. Over time, your character will speak more loudly than anything your mouth could say. People may not understand why they listen more closely to you than to others, but they will feel it. Because you have done the work in silence, your silence itself becomes authority. Invisible authority does not roar. It does not posture. It does not rely on others to recognize it. It exists like a mountain that needs no introduction, like a flame that needs no audience to burn. People sense its presence because it makes them feel steadier, calmer, more focused. That is why the most powerful leaders, teachers, and thinkers often carried themselves with humility. They did not need to tell the world who they were. The world already knew. So remember this: the greatest respect you will ever command does not come from demanding, shouting, or competing. It comes from building yourself so consistently that the world cannot help but notice. Authority born of noise dies with the noise. Authority born of character survives in silence. And from this understanding, we move into an even higher freedom, the kind where you no longer measure your life by the approval of others at all, but by the unshakable independence of a soul that belongs only to itself. At this stage, imagine a chain snapping open, the weight of years of expectation falling away in an instant. For so long, you may have carried the burden of trying to satisfy every voice, every opinion, every demand. You bent when others pressed. You explained yourself when no explanation was owed. You traded your own peace for the fleeting comfort of their approval. But there comes a moment when you realize the heaviest prison is not made of stone. It is made of needing others to agree with you. And in that moment, freedom is born. Now imagine walking through a crowded street. The noise of the market rises, vendors shouting, people debating, judgments flying in every direction. Each voice pulls at you, insisting you agree, insisting you conform. You feel the tug, but you keep walking. You nod, you acknowledge, but you do not surrender. That's your path, you think, and this is mine. The noise does not vanish, but it loses its power over you. This is the turning point, the place where independence of thought is no longer an idea, but a way of living. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not what they say or think of you that should disturb you, but what you think of yourself." True freedom begins there. It begins when your compass no longer spins according to the winds of others' opinions, but steadies itself by the principles you have chosen. Respect may come, disagreement may come, even ridicule may come, but none of it changes who you are. This is the deepest kind of strength, to walk with serenity in a world that tries endlessly to shake you. I remember a young man who always felt trapped by his family's expectations. Every decision, career, relationships, even hobbies was met with judgment. He would defend himself, argue late into the night, desperate to be understood. But one day, weary from the cycle, he shifted. When the familiar criticisms came, he listened, nodded, and said simply, "I hear you, but I choose differently." No anger, no defense, just calm clarity. The first time he did it, the room fell silent. In that silence, a door opened. He had not convinced them, but he had freed himself. Here's the paradox. When you stop trying to win every argument, you begin to win something far greater. You win back your energy. You win back your calm. You win back the ability to decide without fear. Epictetus taught, "If you want to be free, let go of the things you cannot control. The opinions of others are not yours to control. Your response, your direction, your peace, these belong entirely to you." Seneca warned that being a slave to the opinions of others is the worst of prisons. Think of how many people live behind those invisible bars. They wear the clothes they think others will like. They silence their voice in fear of criticism. They exhaust themselves performing for an audience that may never even applaud. But the Stoic path breaks those chains. It teaches that you can respect another's right to speak without yielding your own judgment. You can honor their perspective without abandoning your truth. That is freedom. Freedom does not mean isolation. It does not mean arrogance. It means standing so firmly in your values that you can remain open without being swayed. It is the difference between a tree rooted deeply in the earth and a leaf blown by every gust. The tree does not hate the wind. It bends at times, it sways, but it never forgets its roots. And so it stands for centuries, while the leaves vanish in a season. Think about how relationships change when you embody this. Friends may still disagree, colleagues may still challenge you, family may still press, but they will begin to see something different in you. They will see a calm that cannot be stolen. They will see a steadiness that earns respect, even in disagreement. Over time, they may even come to lean on it, because in a world where so many are pulled by every current, the one who holds steady becomes a refuge. At this stage, the lesson deepens. It is no longer only about defending yourself in single moments. It is about shaping a life where freedom is your default, not your exception. Where disagreement is not a threat, but a natural part of being human. Where respect for others and respect for yourself coexist without conflict. This is the kind of independence the Stoics lived for, not a noisy defiance, but a quiet sovereignty of the soul. So let this be your final anchor. You are not here to convince everyone. You are not here to bend to every opinion. You are here to live aligned with reason, with virtue, with clarity. And when you do, the judgments of others will pass through you like wind through branches. They may shake the leaves, but they cannot uproot the tree. That is the strength that lasts. And from here, the path leads to its true destination, not merely earning respect from others, but discovering the unshakable respect you hold for yourself, the kind no voice can give and no voice can take away. Now you have 5 phrases that, when spoken with calm conviction, can quietly transform the way others respond to you. They are not tricks, they are not weapons of noise, they are tools of clarity. Each phrase, if carried with composure, can remind the world that true respect is never forced into existence. It is drawn out by the strength of your character. Think of the first phrase, "I understand your point, but I disagree." With these words, you affirm independence, You acknowledge the other without surrendering your judgment. This balance is rare, and rare things command respect. Then there is the second phrase, I don't find that appropriate. This is the invisible shield of dignity. It tells the world that your self-respect is non-negotiable. Seneca wrote that he who respects himself will be respected by others. This phrase is the living proof of that truth. The third phrase, let's talk when we can do so respectfully. These words reveal mastery, not weakness. They show you are not afraid of conflict, but you will only engage on terms of dignity. Epictetus taught that while you cannot control others, you can control your response. This phrase is your response, firm and calm, teaching others how to treat you. The fourth phrase, I'd prefer not to continue this conversation. These words are not escape, they are discipline. They remind you that peace is more valuable than victory in a useless quarrel. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the best revenge is to be unlike the one who caused harm. With this phrase, you rise above, choosing wisdom over pride. And finally, the fifth phrase, that's your opinion and I respect it, but I don't share it. This is the door out of the prison of approval. You honor the other without giving up your own freedom. Seneca warned that slavery to the opinions of others is the worst of chains. These words are the key that sets you free. If you practice these phrases with serenity and steadiness, you will notice a change. People will pause before they speak to you. They will weigh their words more carefully. They will listen when you answer. And most of all, they will begin to treat you not as someone to be swayed by pressure, but as someone to be respected for their unshakable presence. Because respect is not seized through noise. It is inspired by character. The deeper message is this: these phrases only carry weight when they are supported by the life you live. If they are empty words, they will fade like echoes. But if they are expressions of discipline, integrity, and composure, they will command attention without effort. Let your words be few, but let your actions be proof that they are true. Now ask yourself which of these 5 arrows of language you will carry with you first. Which phrase will you hold close when pressure comes? Share it in the comments with 2 simple words. My phrase. It is a small act, but it is the first step toward living with quiet authority. And if you found strength in these truths, take a moment to subscribe so you can continue walking this path. Not as a demand, not as pressure, but as an invitation to keep learning the art of living with calm, dignity, and inner freedom. Carry these lessons into your next conversation. Speak less, but mean more. Stand calm, but stand firm. Live in such a way that respect becomes a natural response to who you are. Stay steady. Stay strong. And prepare for what is ahead, because the next lesson will take you deeper into the heart of Stoic wisdom, showing you how to build not only respect from others, but unshakable respect for yourself.